It started with a simple search for a used treadmill, a routine transaction that felt about as harmless as ordering takeout. It was late 2018, and my wife had been dropping hints for months about wanting a treadmill for her birthday. New ones were ridiculously expensive, so I turned to the online classifieds. For days I sifted through listings. Most were either beat-up junk or priced like they were brand new. Then I found one that looked practically untouched. The price was fair, the pictures were clean, so I reached out to the seller. His name was Terrence. All our communication was through text, and he came across as just a normal guy. No red flags. The only slight inconvenience was his schedule. He worked the late shift, getting off at 10 p.m. That meant a late-night drive, about 45 minutes from my place to pick it up. We kept trying to set a time, but it never lined up. Until one evening, he texted me around 8:30 saying he got off early. My wife's birthday was just days away, so I finally agreed. I borrowed my brother's pickup truck and punched the address into my phone. Out of habit, I tried to do a quick street view search. The road existed, but when I zoomed in, there was nothing. Just trees and a gravel path. No house, no structure. Still, it wasn't totally unusual for my area. A lot of properties were tucked away. I drove out into the dark, winding down a gravel road that cut through dense woods. The pavement ended, and my GPS gave up, telling me I'd arrived before I even turned onto the narrow path he directed me to. I drove maybe a quarter-mile down that dirt lane, headlights cutting through the dark, until a house emerged from the trees. It was massive, an old brick mansion with towering pillars and ivy crawling up the walls. It was the last place I expected to find a $200 treadmill. I parked and walked up to the front door, my footsteps echoing on the porch. The knock sounded hollow and loud inside. Terrence opened the door. He was tall, thin, and quiet, probably in his early 30s. He said the treadmill was upstairs and invited me in. The interior was exactly what you'd imagine from the outside. Antique furniture draped in shadows, faded floral wallpaper, and a musty smell that hung in the air. It felt like stepping into a photograph from another century. A quiet, unsettling feeling started to gnaw at me as he led me up the grand staircase. At the top, we entered a long hallway with doors lining both sides. Some were open, most were closed. As I followed him, I glanced into an open room to my left. My eyes locked onto a man sitting on the edge of a bed. He was just sitting there, staring directly at me with a dead, empty look. He didn't move, didn't blink. I quickly looked away, pretending I hadn't seen anything. Terrence didn't react either. He just kept walking to the very last door at the end of the hall. He opened it, revealing a small, sparse room with only the treadmill in the center. I felt a cold prickle on my neck. I waited for him to enter first, but he just patted me on the back and gestured for me to go in, telling me to test it out. I walked over, turned it on, and listened to the motor hum, just going through the motions to get this over with. From the hallway, I heard a soft creak. I looked at Terrence. He was staring back down the hallway, his face suddenly rigid, expressionless. After a long pause, he turned back to me with a tight smile. "So what do you think?" "Yeah, it looks good," I managed to say. He said he'd go grab something to help us move it downstairs, and then he hurried out of the room. I heard his footsteps descend the staircase. I stood there alone for a few seconds. Then I heard a different set of footsteps. Soft at first, walking slowly down the hallway toward me, then a sudden sprint. The steps pounded, racing right to the doorway where I stood, but they stopped just before reaching the entrance. I could see the edge of the hallway, but no one stepped into the light. I heard heavy, controlled breathing. "Hello," I called out. No answer. I knew someone was there. I took a step toward the doorway, and as I did, the footsteps exploded back down the hall. I caught a glimpse of a figure, the man from the bedroom, darting into a room and slamming the door. I stood there frozen. My heart was pounding in my ears. I called out for Terrence. My voice echoed through the empty house. No response. I had to leave. Right now. I started moving down the hallway, my legs feeling like lead. As I passed the door that man had run into, it was dead silent. I didn't dare stop. I reached the top of the stairs and started to descend, my hand gripping the railing. That's when I saw Terrence at the bottom. He was coming up, but when he saw me, he froze. He quickly shifted his right arm behind his back, a sudden, jerky movement. His eyes were wide, almost guilty. We just stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. "Everything all right, bud?" he asked, his voice too calm. I was paralyzed. Whatever he was hiding behind his back wasn't a dolly or a strap. I knew I had to get past him. I forced a smile and said I was just going to grab the cash from my truck. He looked at me, a long, calculating stare. Then a wide, fake smile spread across his face, and he stepped aside, pressing himself against the wall. I walked past him, feeling his eyes on me, expecting a hand to grab me at any second. But I made it to the front door and burst outside into the cold night air. I practically threw myself into the truck. I threw it in reverse, but the truck leaned heavily to one side. I got out to check. All 4 tires were slashed. I didn't care. I drove out of there on the rims, the truck bouncing and scraping against the gravel, not stopping until I hit the main road. I reported it to the police, but nothing came of it. They talked to Terrence, but he refused to answer any questions. I drove on the rims for miles just to escape a house that felt like a trap. Now I can't stop thinking about that other man. Was he a victim? Or was he in on whatever game was being played that night? I just know I was one wrong turn away from never leaving that mansion.